You know, when we look up at the night sky today, we tend to see, well, we see wonder, right? Beauty, the final frontier, all that good stuff. But what if, for pretty much all of human history, looking up didn't inspire wonder at all? What if it was just pure existential terror? That's what we're diving into, because the way our ancestors saw the heavens was so fundamentally different and, honestly, way more frightening than we usually give it credit for.
Yeah, just listen to this. This isn't some flowery poem about a beautiful sunset. This is a report from the front lines of what felt like a cosmic war. When the Greek poet Archilochus saw a total solar eclipse, he wasn't thinking, wow, a celestial alignment. No, he saw the king of the gods, Zeus himself, just deciding to switch off reality, plunging the world into a terrifying, unnatural darkness. And that was the default reaction back then, not curiosity, but just dread.
So here's the absolute core of it. The sky wasn't some peaceful, empty space above us. It was seen as an unpredictable, even hostile environment. It was like our unshielded flank, where total chaos could just descend at any moment, with no warning and for no good reason. And believe me, that one single idea shaped the foundations of religion, science, and power for thousands of years. To really get inside this mindset, there's this fantastic term called mysterium tremendum. It's that feeling of just absolute smallness you get when you're faced with some overwhelming power. It's not like being scared of a lion in the grass. It's this unique, bone-deep dread of something so vast and so alien that it doesn't even play by the same rules of existence. For ancient people, the sky was the mysterium tremendum.
Okay, so what exactly was up there that had them so terrified? Let's break it down. Let's look at the specific events that they saw as signals of pure chaos, the actual monsters they believe lived in the sky.
So think about it. The sun, the moon, the stars, they all move with this comforting, predictable rhythm. But comets? Comets were the rule breakers. They were cosmic intruders. They'd just show up out of nowhere, blaze across the night sky with their, quote, long hair, which is actually what the Greek word komites means, and then just vanish. This kind of random behavior was seen as a tear in the fabric of the cosmos, and that could only mean one thing. Something awful was about to happen down here on Earth.
And look at how incredibly specific this fear was. This wasn't just some vague, oh no, bad things are coming feeling. In ancient China, court astronomers created these meticulous catalogs, like this one from the Silk Book. They thought that the shape, the color, even the number of tails a comet had could predict the exact kind of disaster. You can see it right here. A four-tailed comet didn't just mean trouble, it meant a great plague was on its way. That's some serious, detailed paranoia.
And don't think this was just superstition. This fear was actually backed up by the biggest scientific brain in the ancient Western world, Aristotle. He argued that comets weren't even celestial objects. He said they were basically hot, dry gases rising up from the Earth. And by putting them in our atmosphere, he philosophically locked them into the realm of earthly decay, corruption, and death. He basically gave scientific validation to the idea that their appearance was directly linked to things like droughts, plagues, and wars.
But here's the thing. As scary as a comet was, it was really just a warning sign. A total solar eclipse? That was the disaster itself, happening in real time. I mean, the sun wasn't just a star to them. It was often their chief god, the literal source of life and order. So to see it just get snuffed out in the middle of the day, it was like watching your god get murdered right in front of you. The whole cosmic order was collapsing. In fact, the Greek word eclipse literally means abandonment. It felt like the universe was giving up on you.
And what's truly mind-blowing is how universal this terror was. Just look at this list. From China to the Americas, you've got all these cultures that had zero contact with each other. And they all independently came up with the exact same myth. Some kind of monster is eating the sun. A dragon, a wolf, a demon. The creature changes, but the story is the same. It just points to this deeply human, primal fear of the dark winning.
The Aztec version of this myth was particularly intense. For them, when the sun disappeared, the barrier between worlds just dissolved. And these skeletal star demons, that Tsimimi, would literally pour through the hole in the sky to devour all of humanity. The terror was immediate and very specific. They would hide pregnant women, put out all the fires. The entire society would brace for a literal apocalypse. It was a full-blown society-wide emergency protocol.
Okay, so comets were signs, eclipses were cosmic dramas, but meteors? Meteors were physical. They were hard, tangible proof that the sky could actually attack you. Just imagine it. You're walking along, and suddenly a fireball streaks across the sky brighter than the sun, and then, boom! A shockwave shakes the ground. To the ancient mind, that's not a rock from space. That's a weapon, a flaming spear thrown by the gods. It's direct, personal, and incredibly violent.
And this kind of direct physical threat, well, it might even explain one of the most famous religious events in history. Get this. Some researchers now think a meteor airburst could be the real story behind the Apostle Paul's conversion. The description on the road to Damascus, a blinding light from the sky, a voice like thunder, being thrown to the ground, it maps almost perfectly onto what people experienced during the Chelyabinsk meteor event in 2013. You can totally see how a natural event could be powerfully and very understandably interpreted as a God speaking directly to you.
And the proof of this way of thinking is baked right into ancient languages. The Egyptians, for example, didn't really have a word for iron because they weren't smelting it yet. The only iron they knew came from meteorites, so their word for it was bin-namt, which literally means iron from the sky. It reveals their entire cosmology. They basically thought the sky was a solid iron dome and these rocks were divine fragments of it, literally a resource gifted from a very active and very dangerous heaven.
So you're faced with this constant, unpredictable hostility from the sky. What do you even do? You can't fight back, right? Well, instead, humans became architects of order. They started developing these incredibly sophisticated systems, not just to understand the sky, but to manage their absolute fear of it. And right here, you can see this crucial leap in thinking. I mean, it's one thing to have a scary story about a sky dog eating the sun. It is a completely different thing to create a professional class of astronomers whose entire job is to predict when that dog is going to attack. This is the jump from passive terror to active risk management. Humanity went from being victims of the chaos to trying to control its impact. And maybe the most dramatic example of this is the Mesopotamian substitute king ritual. It's wild. When astronomers predicted an eclipse, which they saw as a direct threat to the king's life, they didn't just, pray harder. No, they'd find some commoner, dress him up in royal clothes, and put him on the throne. The real king would go into hiding. The whole idea was to fool the angry gods into smiting the decoy. And once the eclipse was over and the danger had passed, the substitute king was executed. The omen was fulfilled and the real king was safe. It's brutal for sure, but from their point of view, it's a perfectly logical way to manage a cosmic threat.
But in the long run, the ultimate defense wasn't some dramatic ritual. It was mathematics. The invention of the calendar. That was a revolutionary leap. It became humanity's single greatest weapon against the sky. Because if you can measure the cycles, if you can predict the patterns, well then the chaos isn't really random anymore, is it? You can impose human order on divine chaos, and that is a massive shift in the power dynamic.
And you see this pop up everywhere. The Babylonians got incredibly good at predicting eclipses, specifically to protect their king. The Egyptians developed their precise solar calendar not for fun, but to predict the Nile's annual flood, which their entire civilization depended on. The Maya, they tracked these insanely complex cosmic cycles to keep their whole society in sync with the heavens. Astronomy wasn't a hobby, it was a science of pure survival. And of course, this kind of knowledge was power. In a world that was terrified of the sky, the guy who could predict what it was going to do next, well, he was seen as having a direct line to the gods. An emperor who could say, hey, the sun is going to disappear next Tuesday, wasn't just a ruler, he was the son of heaven, the one person keeping the cosmic order from falling apart. And yeah, if you failed to predict an omen, it could absolutely get you killed. Okay, so this brings us to the final piece of the puzzle. Because managing the sky with math and rituals, that's kind of a technical solution, right? It doesn't solve the deeper psychological problem of that overwhelming fear. So how did that raw terror finally evolve into the organized worship of sky gods that we're all more familiar with?
Well, the psychology behind it is actually pretty simple. A random meteor strike is pure, uncontrollable chaos. There's nothing you can do about it. But what if it's not a random rock? What if it's a thunderbolt thrown by an angry god like Zeus? Well, an angry god is someone you can deal with. You can try to negotiate, you can offer sacrifices, you can perform rituals, you can try to live a better life. By giving the chaos a face and a personality, humanity made it manageable. You turn a hostile and personal force into a relationship.
And so, after thousands and thousands of years, that monster in the sky was, in a way, finally tamed. That nameless, faceless dread was given a purpose and a form. But here's the kicker. The crucial point. The sky itself never changed. Comets and eclipses are just as powerful today as they ever were. The monster wasn't tamed because it changed. The monster was tamed because we did. We invented the tools, math, astronomy, religion, to measure, to predict, and to make sense of its behavior.
We learned how to measure its teeth.
Which leaves us with one last question to chew on. When we look up at the vastness of space today with our modern scientific awe, are we really so different from our ancestors? Or is that feeling of wonder just the newest layer we've built on top of a very, very ancient foundation of pure existential terror?